Mic check? Okay. So everyone knows what an array is, right?
A list of things.
A list of things, a group of things that are all the same data type. And in order to be an array, they are all adjacent to each other in memory. All right, and it means they are right next to each other in the actual memory blocks. Arrays have, it's a great way of creating a list of things or a group of things. Anytime you're using a program and you find yourself saying thing 1, thing 2, thing 3, and so on, that's your indication you need an array most of the time. So we'll look at your basic arrays in Java, and then we'll move on to multi-dimensional arrays, and then possibly array list. So your basic array is going to start with the data type. I'll zoom in a little bit here. Whatever you're making an array of, so integers is what I'm going to make. You give your array a name and you put the brackets on the end of it. And then you say equals new whatever it is. Integers, brackets again, and you must specify a size. Okay, so very object-oriented nature here. We're using new. Even the primitives are objects.
Arrays are one size, right? Like once you initialize it, you can't change the size.
Right, they don't change size. You can't shrink and grow arrays. But anyways, data type, the name with the brackets, and then equals new, whatever that thing is, with the size in the brackets. Now you can move your brackets. Sometimes you may see it done this way. Well, not exactly that way. This way. And that may make a little more sense. My data type is an integer array. It is called num and equals new integer. You can do it either way. As long as the brackets appear on one or the other, Java is okay with that. And then we have an array locked in at said size. Our indices start at 0 and will roll through 9. So when we specify that we want 10 here, we don't actually get number 10, we get 0 through 9. And you would access the array the same way you would in C++. We would say num sub 0 equals something, some number. And if we wanted to see index 3, we do system.out.println, name of the array, sub 3. And what do you expect to see here? Garbage or 0?
Garbage.
I think they're all 0.
Yeah, it'd either be 0 or garbage.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
They're all filled up with zeros by default. You would think garbage. In C++ it would be garbage. But in Java they are all 0 by default. If it's an integer.
So you can just create a whole bunch of arrays and pull data from previous files.
What's that?
Yeah, just create a whole bunch of arrays and call from previous files. Because couldn't you do that in like C++, where you create like a really large array and then use it to read what like information that you have there?
Maybe. I'm not following you, but maybe.
Because that's how like a lot of, you taught us this, that's how a lot of viruses were made, that it used arrays and then broke through them to look at other files.
Okay, you're talking about buffer overflow.
Yeah.
There's a lot of guardrails in Java for that kind of stuff that we don't have in C++. Yeah. If you specified an array size, and or you're using an application that had a specific array size for a string, a C string, and then you were to enter a string that exceeded the size of that array, it can trip bits in in the other parts of the code. So it would still try to write it there is what would happen.
Yeah.
And so it would write into the other memory that belonged to other parts of the program. And yeah, you could break things like that. Hack things like that. It's pretty niche situations, but you could do it. All right.
So if the array was in a different type, would it still set it all to 0?
I don't know. Let's see. What do you want to do?
Oh, I don't care.
Strings? Strings seems like the most logical. Strings are not primitive though, so this is already a little bit different. Name sub-zero cannot equal a number now, it has to equal a string. And then let's see what that is. Null. Get null on a string. About 0. Get our 39, so that works. What if we were going to, I'm going to go back to integers for the sake of this next part, but you could control Z that if you want to reverse a little bit. Arrays lend themselves to for loops really nice. So if you wanted to initialize a lot of or all of your elements in an array, you can say for. The typical convention is in I equals 0, I less than num dot what? Length. I plus plus. Length is not a function. Length is actually a variable belonging to the array. So that's a little different than C++. In C++, we would have to say, I don't even think arrays have it, but with like vectors and stuff, you would say dot size as a function. But in Java, we actually have a variable called length that belongs to this array that keeps track of how big it is. And we would say num sub I equals something. We can set it equal to I. And then we could print out if we wanted to. And I'll scrap this print statement. And it gives us I equals 0 through 9. Just as we expected. Someone was complaining about having to write system.out every time, which I understand. If you want to, you can create a print string. Just say out equals system dot out, and then fix import, and then you can just use out, or you could change this to whatever you want. You could say p.println or out.println, something like that. You can shorten this into something smaller. Slightly lazier. All right, let's display the entire thing. We can say this is kind of like an enhanced for loop or an auto for loop. We can say we're going to do int n, and then we give the name of the array, which is num. And so this is the data type of the array. This is what we are going to refer to an element as. So this is not short for num, this is short for num sub something. This is short for num sub I. And then you could say, out dot print line, n equals n. And I'll take out the print statement above just to avoid confusion. So we have one for loop here that sets them all, and we have another for loop that reads them all out, but this is a enhanced for loop or an auto loop, for each loop if you want to call it that. You get the same results. But this is your for each loop. These are really only, I won't say only good, but normally used for reading, not for writing. You need to make changes, use your typical stuff most of the time. All right, let's do an array of objects. I'm going to come up here and create a class. Good old item class. Let's look at how we would make an array of objects. So it's pretty much done the same way. It's going to be items, or an item array. Give it a name. Equals new item. And then you specify how many you want. Now this does not create the items. This is only the array. That's the important thing. You have only created the array. It's the same in C++ as if you were to create an array of pointers to objects. So you didn't create the objects, you only created the pointers. Here we are only creating the reference variables. If you want to actually use this, we need a for loop to fill it up with items. So we can actually do the for each loop here. We can say for item in items in equals new item. And it would be good if I put, braces around it. Not required. And this will give us an array of items. So if you try to use your array up here before you create the objects, you're going to get something like a null pointer exception. So I can do, let's comment this out. We were to say system.out.println name of item 1 plus items sub 0 dot name. Like syntactically that looks fine, but when you try to run it, null pointer exception. Basically, your reference variables are kind of like pointers, so you get that null pointer exception. Hey, there's no object here. This pointer is pointing at absolutely nothing, so when we tried to retrieve the name, it was empty. So let's bring this back online, fill our array up with objects, and then run our statement, our print statement. I still get job. What? What did I do wrong? Maybe this for loop. We'll try the traditional route and see if that changes it. That works. That's what I was saying earlier. It's best to only use the auto loop if you're reading, not if you're writing. It does the same thing in C++. In C++ though, you can put the ampersand there and actually get access to the array. Otherwise it treats it like a pass-by value function. So I recommend only reading with the for each loop, don't write with it. And that's what we expect. We already saw that strings are null if they haven't been initialized, so that's fine. Any questions so far? If we want to make a 2D array, come back up here. We'll change our data type to double array, and then we specify the size. We'll hold off on the items for right now. Just use the integers. So you can do that. Oh, I also forgot, you can initialize an array like this, like you would in C++. That's the thing. You can do that. And it knows that it is an array of integers, and it's called nums, and the size is 3, elements 0, 1, and 2 as follows. So that's also a thing. And you can do the same thing with the two-dimensional array. How many elements do I have here? 100, right? 10 rows, 10 columns. Everyone's played Battleship. There's 100 squares. That's what this is. Rows and columns. Or you can, set up all the different arrays here. And it makes it a little easier to read. If you're going to initialize a 2D array, we can could do something like this. So sometimes you might see a 2D array initialized like that. And that lets you see the row and column nature of the beast here. So system.out.println. If we were to print out num 1, 2, what do you expect to see? A half?
I was going to say 5, but I think it's one less.
5, right?
If we go row 1, is it row or is it column?
Wait, 3.
I know it's gonna be 5.
9.
Yeah, 9 actually. Because it starts at 0, right?
Starts at 0.
Yeah.
Are we going this way or we count down this way?
Down 1.
Down 1, so row 1,
Mm-hmm.
column 2, we expect to see this 9? Did y'all cheat? Y'all cheated. let's put a 2 there and make sure that's not this 9. Okay, y'all are right. Down 1 row, over 2 columns. Row and column. Very good.
0, yeah.
And the size of the array is a 3 by 3. Okay, you can get extra crazy if you want to. You can make these arrays as many dimensions as you want. And basically you would have to do this now 3 times. And so it would be rows and columns, and then I don't know what you call the next dimension in. You think of it like a cube of 27 elements, or they don't have to be the same size. It could be 3 by 4 by 20. So I don't recommend this, but you can do it. 2D arrays are not uncommon. 3D arrays, I don't know that I've ever seen one used in practice. They get pretty awkward to work with, but they do exist. It is a thing. You can make as many dimensions as you want. All right, now we'll do this thing called a jagged array. I think the book calls it irregular array. When I was taught, though, it was called a jagged array.
Doesn't stab you.
It could. What you're going to do is you're going to say, I want an array that is 2 dimensions. And instead of specifying both of these, you're only going to specify one. I want 3 rows, and I'm not going to say how many columns. Okay, so now we can have an array of arrays, and they can all be different lengths. Why would you need this? I don't know. But it is a thing. It does exist, and you can do it. You can say num sub 0 equals, it's an array of arrays, right? So index 1 is going to be an array of integers. So new int, and I want my first row to have 20 columns. And I can say num sub 1 equals new array, and I only want it to have 3 columns.
But they all have to be the same data type, right?
All have to be the same data type. And this one can be 1,000. Oh, you can do that. That's a jagged array. And I don't know why you would do it, but it is an array of arrays. That's what that is. This is only angry because I called it nums. And you can print that out. Here you should get 0. What if I change this to a 3? What do you expect to see?
Zero.
Out of bounds. Out of bounds because I only put 3 there. So I get 0, 1, and 2. And when I go over to 3, I'm out of bounds. Everybody understand that? Simple enough? Okay. Log this away in your reservoir. Pretentious, useless information. May not be completely useless. I just don't know where you would want a jagged array.
It'd be useful if there was more than one data type.
There's got to be somewhere somebody actually needed that. And I don't know.
I mean, the fact that it can happen is pretty neat. You just have a list of lists.
We already talked about the length member.
Yeah.
I'll add a question about ternary operators. Just remember how to read and write ternary operators. Okay.